Hey, do you ever find yourself kind of torn between cold calling scripts? You try script A this week, next week you try script B, then you hear something else from a friend, then you try to do that. The problem with this is you never get really, really good and confident at what you want to say, and that can also crush your cold calling metrics and numbers that you need to be making. I know this because I used to do this all the time. I would just obsess over different scripts and what sounded better, and it was a vicious cycle. So in this week's episode of A Diary of a New Producer, what I'm going to talk about is how sticking with a script can really, really help you. I'm going to share a story from Ian, and then I'm also going to talk secondly about how to approach a first meeting when you know that your prospect is unhappy. Do you change up anything? We'll find out. Hey, if you're new here, welcome to the channel. If you've watched our stuff before, welcome back. This is Diary of a New Producer. It's our special series where we give you a look behind the curtain into a real life producer. From week one, we followed his journey. I know because I'm his mentor. We're calling him Ian Cognito to protect his identity, but he's now in month number 6. And so if you've missed past episodes, go check them out. Every single week is different, and there's valuable takeaways for you. And also, if you're a first-time subscriber or watcher of the Max Revenue Show, thanks for joining us. Our mission's simple: help growth-minded insurance producers sell more insurance. All right, so let's get into this, folks. This week, Ian and I had some good talks, right? But as I said, the first thing that we talked about was the scripting. And this is a story I want to share with you that I think might motivate you or help you feel better about sticking with a script that you adopt, okay? So Ian uses the cold calling script that I have shared. I'll just share right now real quickly. And it goes something like this. It'd be like, hey, Bob, pause. Yeah, this is Micah with ABC Agency. Pause again. Then they say, okay, what's going on? You'd say, yeah, Bob, are you in charge of the insurance, or does that roll up under someone else on your team? Pause, let them answer. And then you just say, if it is them, yeah, Bob, hey, I know you got an agent you work with. I'm not calling to quote or bid, but I was just wondering, like, what do you guys do from a due diligence side of things? Stop. That's it. All right, so that's the script. I'm not saying it's the best in the world, but it's worked really, really well for me. There's some nuances to it, which I've talked about in other videos, so I'm not going to go there today. But the funny thing is, this is kind of the story, is that 2 weeks ago, last week, Ian had made, gosh, I don't know, almost 200 calls, like 190 calls, had several conversations, and set 0 meetings. Goose egg, right? That sucks. We've all been there. Well, last week he's calling, and it was like a Tuesday, and he just wanted to chat about something. He's like, dude, I've set like 6 meetings today, booked meetings. I'm like, what? What did you change? That was my first question, right? It was a silly question. He laughed, and he's like, absolutely nothing, man. He's like, I'm doing the same thing I was doing the last week in the last 6 months. And anyways, so we thought it was funny, but I want to share that story with you because I think there's a lot of you guys out there watching this as newer producers or any age producer, that if you're trying to always get better, sometimes it can lead us to constantly changing. And I know, again, because as in the intro, I said I did this a lot. I have so many different scripts typed up, and I hear this guru and that guru talk about how to say it, how to question, should you lead with pain points? And I tried a lot of them. And I kind of got to this point where I had to find a script that worked really, really well and just stick with it. Give it some time to actually see if it works or not. I'm not saying to stick with something forever, right? If you notice after a month or 2 months or 3 months that it's not working, then change. But every other week, if you're trying something new, you don't really have a good basis point, right? Because there's just not enough data to really tell you what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so, and then there's some scripts that people will say that maybe work for one industry really well, but when I look at it from like an insurance standpoint, it doesn't work so well. Okay, so find one that works well for you, that you're confident saying. I always say this too: the worst cold calling script is the one that you can't say confidently, or the one that just gives you cold call reluctance to say. Okay, if that's the problem, then find a script that you're comfortable saying it. The main thing is you got to just be having conversations at first, right? If you're not even doing that, you're never going to set a meeting. So thought someone out there might find that useful or helpful. Okay, so the second thing that Ian and I talked about, and the last thing that we'll talk about in today's episode, is how to approach a first meeting when your prospect has already told you in that first phone call, like, hey, we're leaving our agent, or we're fed up, they're terrible. And this happened to Ian. So he's like, man, 2 times last week, I called people and they told me something similar. One of the times, the guy was like, our agent retired, and the guy doesn't like his agency, has no loyalty, and I got to call him back. What should I do with that first meeting? And I was like, actually, man, don't do anything different really at all. I mean, maybe you knowing that's really helpful, but you still want to follow that framework, right? Because in our first meeting framework, it's not really about the competition much. There's maybe a couple questions about how would you rate your current agent, or on a scale of 1 to 10. Obviously, you're not going to ask questions like that. But you're going to that first meeting and you really just want to kind of have a high level conversation about their business, where they're at today, where they're trying to get to, what they've done in the past from an insurance due diligence process. Make sure they understand how the game works, and that they're on the same page there, and then just lay out what you need to do that. And the reason, though, that this is the best way to approach it, I think, and I wouldn't change it up, is because you still need to know if you guys are a good fit to work together. And so many other agents would go out there and quickly try to close that deal and try to slam an AOR across the table. I think sometimes when you pull back and you actually approach things from a more like, hey, let's make sure we're a good fit to work together, it's going to impress the buyer more. So that's all I would encourage you to do, is go to that first meeting and don't really treat it much differently. Now, if the guy is like literally like unhappy or in tears, like, we want to change today, don't walk away. Like, at that point, okay, here's what we got to do, and execute it. But I think it'll go a long way and earn you some really good will if you approach it this way instead. And also, from just a admin side of things, you don't even know what markets they have, right? Can you AOR it? Can you not? So there's a lot of different things, but I think doing the due diligence first still makes a lot of sense for both you and also the prospect. And they will respect you more for it if you just tell them, like, hey, I want to make sure we're a good fit to work together before we just take this over. I don't want you to rush into a relationship with me. So anyways, well, that's all I got for you today. If you liked this video, do us a favor, thumbs up, subscribe, and comment below. Let me know if you've struggled with cold calling scripts, and if you've been trying to change them up, what's your favorite one you like to use? Would love to know. Good luck.